Now, if Divine had an album, if Divine had an album out, I would karaoke the shit out of his songs. So Evan's go-to is Sex and Candy.
Yep.
You know what, though? Maybe I should do something 90s. Maybe I should do some soul coughing. Maybe I should do Super Bon Bon. That would be my go-to song.
Super Bon Bon.
Yeah. Do you not know that one?
Yeah. I think you should demonstrate it.
Dave, you would murder me for saying this.
Uh-oh.
But I definitely want to hear you sing at least one song by Hootie and the Blowfish.
You know that when I was in, I won't tell you what age, but I would be out at bars and is it called Only Want to Be With You?
I think so.
Only want to be with you. So I would always sing, Only want to say fuck you.
Yeah,
because fuck those guys and their cracked rear view.
Because Dave, I think you and I were at bars at roughly the same time. Because that played constantly when I was at bars too.
Oh my God. That song has 2 chords. Now, I'm not saying you can't write a good song. The verse has 2 chords. And I'm not saying you can't write a good song with 2 chords, but you're not John Lennon. You can't write the word, okay? It's not, oh my God. Hootie and the Blowfish make me so angry. It makes me so angry that shitty fucking frat boy bullshit was ever popular. I mean, these assholes used to give interviews and be like, when we're on tour, if we pass a golf course, we got to pull over and play. It's like, would you shut the fuck up?
Somewhere in the middle of Arizona, you painted a desert and called it my...
Welcome to Spoiler Piece Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Evan Crean. I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s movie guide to better living.
My name is Megan Kearns. I'm a contributor to Edge Media, and I too am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
And my name is Dave Riedel. I write for Salt Lake City Weekly sometimes. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association, etc., etc.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah. You know what's funny about that is I feel like we all know we should do it, but we're like, wait, should we do it? So then,
yeah.
And then screw it, we're doing it.
Mm-hmm. We've got some movies to talk about today, as usual.
That would be weird if we didn't, by the way.
Yes. We're just gonna shoot the shit and
see you next week.
Clip show, which we have done once or twice in a pinch. So we've got Before the Fire, which makes me think of After the Fire, but that's neither here nor there.
And Derek Commissar, yeah.
Yes. We've got An American Pickle. We've got Random Acts of Violence and Sputnik. We're going to start with Before the Fire, which Megan and Dave.
We sure have.
Yeah, we have. Saw Before the Fire, all right. Saw the shit out of it. Megan, what'd you think?
About?
Whoa.
It's about this is kind of why I wished you'd seen it. This movie could not be timely.
Yes.
It could not be.
Yeah.
It is about a pandemic, which in this case is a flu that is even worse than the 1918 Spanish influenza.
Interesting.
And because we get down to martial law and things go crazy. But the movie, it's kind of about the pandemic, but what it's really about is this woman who goes back to her hometown and her psycho family wants to kidnap her and does.
Okay.
Yeah. And we're not sure why, other than the fact that, and I shouldn't have said psycho family, her family with problems.
Actually, I'm gonna disagree. We actually know exactly why they want to kidnap her, but we're gonna get into that.
Oh, do we? What was it?
Well, we're going to get into that.
Okay.
So that is a great description, Dave, and I agree with you on that description because I think this is why I actually really liked this movie a lot because I liked it a lot too. So I'm a sucker for a post-pandemic, post-apocalyptic, dystopian film. Like any one of those 3 descriptors, I am in. I am so in. So I was super pumped to see this, and it's not really about the pandemic. I mean, it is, but it's more kind of in the background. Yes, exactly. And basically, the filmmaker Charlie Bueller and Jenna Ling Adams, who's the star, as well as she wrote the script, basically they use a pandemic to kind of, and that genre, to tell a story about a domestic violence survivor. And I find that absolutely fascinating. And so, yes, the reason her family, which is really just her father, although her mother's around too, but her mother isn't in the picture when it comes to wanting to kidnap her, but it's her father who wants to kidnap her, that we learn later on in the film, because he's an abusive asshole and basically just wants to keep her under his thumb so he can control her. So that's the reason he wants to kidnap her.
See, now I must have been out of my mind, because I never even realized that was her father. I was like, is this the crazy uncle or her brother? Like, who the fuck is this guy?
Yeah.
Okay. I was not paying as much attention as I should have.
Unless I'm way off base, which is entirely possible. I could be totally wrong.
I certainly can't correct you.
The other thing about it, which was actually a little distracting for me, is the guy who plays her father looks so much like Mark Strong that every time he came on screen, every time he came on screen, I was like, wait, it's Mark Strong. No, it's not. It's not fucking Mark Strong. Jesus. You know?
Yeah.
And he has played parts like this before. So it all kind of got me a little bit confused, which is not hard to do these days.
I mean, there's a lot happening.
Megan,
yes.
Megan, I don't know how you felt about this, but the main character, whose name I can't remember, Ava, right? They call her family calls her Amanda.
Right. But she's clearly changed her name.
Ava. Yes, and she's a TV star.
Yes.
And she and her boyfriend, who live in LA, are coincidentally from the same hometown.
Yes, they are.
And he puts her in a plane and sends her back to the hometown. And you think he's going to go with her, but he doesn't. He sticks her in the plane alone, and he goes to Atlanta to cover. He's a photojournalist, to cover what's going on with the CDC. And so she's stuck in this town. She doesn't want to be in alone with his family, who she thinks doesn't like her. And that's not really true. Her mom actually likes her a lot. And her brother grows to like her. And I actually thought that they were going to have an affair there for a while.
Me too, but I'm glad they didn't have an affair. And I actually really like their relationship. Like, I like how it kind of blossoms into this really great friendship, and they're kind of opening up about how they saw their lives unfolding. And like, he's very protective of her. Like when they run into her father, at the bar, he like physically stands in between the two of them and, block and shields her. And then, when they're in the house and his mother needs insulin and her father shows up, threatening her, saying, I'll give you the insulin if you come with me. And like, he very gently put the brother, her boyfriend's brother, puts his hand gently in hers and is like, we'll find another way. Like, it was so beautiful and tender that I was so glad they didn't take it to an affair, but that they clearly had this very strong, intimate bond that, I just really I liked that so much.
Me too. And you know what I was thinking? I was thinking if a dude wrote the screenplay, they probably would have.
Exactly. That's the thing. And like, this was so sensitively done. And I'm like, it's so like, not that, obviously people of multiple genders can't make things, more sensitive. But to me, it was so very clear that this was a film made by women, just because, and like, they're just little touches, like when, like, before we even know that she's, been abused by her father, we know she doesn't want to go home. We don't know why, but we know she's like, I can't go back there. I don't want to go back there. And then she's in a bar and she's waiting for the brother, and she immediately whips around when someone enters, and then the brother comes up behind her and she like jumps, and I'm like, oh, she's an abuse survivor. Like, it was so clear to me, because there's just so many like physical little tip-offs, as to making her so jumpy. And I was just like, somebody is very, paying really close. Either this is a very personal story, or someone's paid really close attention to details like this in conveying that, which I just really appreciated.
And the great relationship that she develops with her boyfriend's brother and mother turns out to be super heartbreaking, because we'll say it's her father. Her father kills them both unceremoniously and then moves into their house.
Yeah. With his crew of dudes, which is so gross.
With his militia.
Yeah.
It's fucked up. And we don't know how many times she tries to escape, but she tries to escape multiple times. It's clear. And they only show her trying to escape once on, I guess technically twice, because at the end of the movie she has escaped. Although it seems like she might be dying from the flu.
Yeah,
Um,
there is that.
There is that. Well, you know what I thought though? She's got that wound in her
Mhm.
stomach.
It
or
could
her
have been from
abdomen.
that.
It could have
Yeah,
been from
we
that.
don't know.
But either way, internal bleeding, bad. The flu, bad.
Bad.
So, everything bad. And here, so at one point before the brother and the mother get killed unceremoniously, and I mean unceremoniously,
Yeah.
just one shot apiece, dead.
But we don't see it, which is so interesting. I'm just going to say, it's so interesting we don't see it. We hear Ava's reaction to it. We hear her screams, and we just see that outside of the house. Like, I just thought that was really well done too. Like, it's not, gory, it's not excessive, but it's somehow worse because we just hear her anguish.
Yeah. It's almost like, it's kind of like, the filmmakers are like, this is factually bad. You don't need to know anymore.
Yeah.
It
also kind of feels like it's conveying how trapped she is. Like, we're not even allowed into this moment with her. We're no longer alongside with her. We're outsiders now, and she's trapped in there.
Yeah. Right before mom gets killed, you hear her talking on the phone, and then her brother gets on the phone and saying that the boyfriend has disappeared in Atlanta. His network or newspaper or whatever that he's working for can't find him. And it turns out he has been trying to make his way back across the country, and he gets home. This is South Dakota, by the way. I read one of the license plates. He gets back home and kind of finds her. Like, he realizes where she is, which is at his family home. But he's so outnumbered, he can't like storm in and get her. So she ends up, basically saving her. Not basically, she saves herself. She tricks her father into getting his hand stuck in a bear trap.
Yep.
And then she sets him on fire.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
And the film also starts that way too. It starts with the fire and her outside watching the fire.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that. That's that's where he meets his end.
I kind of, you know what? I thought, I remembered that it was one of those movies where it starts at the end and then goes back to the beginning, but I was kind of hoping that she would shoot him in the knees at least once, or maybe once in the gut. So he'd also be, in addition to burning to death, which I'm sure is very painful.
Yeah.
Also have the pain of those two gunshot wounds.
Well, he's got the bear trap wound happening on his hand. That's painful too.
Yeah, that's pretty painful.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's a solid thriller.
Sounds good.
Really smart, and everything just kind of works.
Yeah.
There were a couple of things that I thought were sort of clunky with the editing.
Oh, okay.
That now, of course, I can't remember off the top of my head. Oh, well, for example, when she chokes out one of the guys, like the one kind of, I'll call him the nice guy, although
he's
really
a creep too. But but he's better, I guess, quote unquote.
But he can't bring himself to kill anybody or really abuse. He turns an eye to everything, which in my estimation is just as bad. But I thought that she had strangled him to death when in fact she had just choked him out. And I was just like, oh, wait, he's there. And there's that belt mark across his neck. Okay. And then, so there were a couple of moments like that where it wasn't clear exactly what was going on.
Oh, see, I thought it was clear. That's so funny.
Oh, see, I thought she had killed him. And I was like, yes.
No, because usually when you choke someone out, you don't kill them. So.
Well, yes, but you could keep choking him until he stopped.
That is also true. I just figured she was just trying to get away. So yeah, that's funny that we both read it differently. Yeah.
And then a moment later when she is confronted by, I don't remember which guy, what his name is, but he's considerably larger than she is. And he gets on top of her and she pulls his knife from his belt and she stabs him a couple of times and, gets him off of her and she runs away. And you think, all right, well, there's just a couple of stab wounds. No, he's dead as a doornail. So like, There are a couple of moments where I was just like, I'm not sure what's going on. And also there's a scene when the boyfriend is like running through the yard when there's people in the house, there's people in the barn, there's the coward guy who's over by the cornfield, and he's running toward them and no one sees him.
I will say about when she stabs the guy, I don't think it's in his gut. I actually think it's lower. I think it's like not necessarily in his crotch, but I think it's like to the side where that like massive vein is. So
Femoral
thank you.
Action,
Yes, thank you. That's it. I could not think of it. I think that's possibly where she stabbed him, because I was like, oh, that's not the groin, but it's not quite the stomach. So that might be why he bled out faster. Just, maybe. But the other stuff totally fits. I mean, talking about the technical elements, I thought the score was absolutely gorgeous. I thought the cinematography was really, really great. What I also love is that, I mean, this is very clearly a low budget film, but what I love is that
but it doesn't really look like
it doesn't look like it at all. But what I loved is that they really capitalized on as many things as they could within the budget. Like, for instance, like there are a tremendous amount of things environmentally storytelling wise. Like, we have news reports on the radio and news reports on TVs, and we see charts that Kelly, her boyfriend, has about rates of infection and things like that. So there's a lot we're learning about the pandemic and how many cases and how gas prices are skyrocketing and how the country's under martial law and things like that. But I love that it's all audio, and it clearly was done so they could save money on graphics or visuals or things like that. But it also just really works into the fabric of the film, where even though this is not a film about the pandemic per se, it is very clearly omnipresent, and it's just kind of woven into the fabric of their lives and of the story, because she's so clearly trapped. She can't go anywhere because of it. And so, I really loved the way they told the story, but I also loved the way they used the fact that they didn't have a big budget to really maximize their storytelling. And I just thought it was really smart. So I think there were just a lot of really smart choices.
Yeah. And it was also smart just to kind of have an isolated open space to shoot. It mostly takes place on this piece of property. Occasionally they go to town, and in that sense, it's kind of like, well, we have pretty good control over this. So yeah, just I wonder if they're like, oh, we have these locations, let's think of something we can set there. Or if they were like, I wrote this movie about a pandemic.
Well,
where can we find a farm?
So it's funny that you say that, because the filmmaker, Charlie Buehler, the director, she is very interested about wide open spaces. I believe she said in an interview or in something that she grew up in open spaces, so that's why she kind of likes isolated spaces. And she and Jenna Ling Adams, the star screenwriter, they both love action films and sci-fi films, and they wanted to do a genre film that is a woman's story. So there's that. So I think it's both. I think they wanted to do a genre film, and they also wanted to explore isolationism and kind of wide open spaces. So
Cool.
Well, all right. Sounds like a good movie.
Totes.
Yeah, it is.
Spoiler pieced me into wanting to see it.
Yay.
So then I guess let's move on to An American Pickle.
And let's move away from it as quickly as we can.
Yes, please. Yeah. Oh my God.
Now, I'm going to start this one here. This is one of those movies. It's like, it's bad and it's bad.
Yeah.
But it's not offensively bad. It's just kind of a bummer, because you think, this could be kind of a cool story. Guy falls into a vat of pickle juice, gets pickled for 100 years, which somehow keeps him alive, wakes up to find his only living relative, kind of eases himself into contemporary society relatively,
quickly,
without too much difficulty, which I think is actually a smart choice for what the story ended up being. But then just the whole, they become rivals, and this, I really didn't like it.
The whole middle is garbage. I liked the beginning and I liked the end, and I feel like the whole middle was garbage. And it's so many squandered opportunities to do something interesting. So this is it's a Jewish story. It's a very Jewish narrative. You have Seth Rogen playing Herschel from the old country, from Schloops.
Right.
And, he comes to America. He's trying to pursue his dreams, and then he's pickled. Then he comes out of it and he meets his great grandson, played also by Seth Rogen. And I think there's something really interesting here about, the immigrant life, the Jewish diaspora, the idea that Jewish people are often forced out of places, where they live by, in this case, we had the Cossacks that came and ransacked their village and chased these people away. And I feel like there were so many interesting opportunities to comment on that and to talk about generational stories, and this is none of that. It's just weird story where they become rivals.
Which I don't buy that. I don't buy that. I don't buy that Herschel, after all that he's been through, would do that.
I agree.
I mean, this is a guy who left his country because Cossacks murdered everyone in his village, and he's going to turn away the one living relative he has? No.
Yeah. And the idea that, the present day Seth Rogen, let's call him.
Yeah.
He's such an asshole. Like, he's such a dick.
Yeah.
And it's just, he's just shitting on everything that Herschel's trying to do because he's mad. And it's just so weird because, like, my problem is that by the time they reconcile at the end, I feel like they've come way too far as rivals for them to ever put the pieces back together as quickly.
Agreed.
It doesn't add up to me. I think that ends up being my final problem with the movie, aside from the middle just being extremely unpleasant and really just a waste.
Yeah. And also, how is one of them going to get back into the United States? Because one of them was deported.
Yep.
Now, I mean, how they're like, let's go back and start a pickle business. Okay, great. How are you going to do that? Only one of you can get in.
Yeah. And they didn't have to go there. They didn't have to go the deportation route. They could have done enough with Herschel's bad Twitter comments and his comments about prayer in school. That was enough to ostracize him. They didn't also then need to deport him, other than to give an excuse for, Ben, Seth Rogen's character, the great grandson, to have to go back to the old country and have to reconnect with his Judaism.
And that feels like absolutely lazy writing, because there's so many other ways that, he could have gone to visit, or he could have gone to a synagogue, or, connected with other Jewish people and grieved. There's just so many other ways to go about it. And the other thing, like, I don't know how you guys felt about it. I felt offended that they're doing a deportation storyline with a white dude. Like, I'm sorry. It just was there was something just so off about that. And I'm like, there are people who are being deported all the time because they're, brown people, black people, you name it, and not a fucking white dude. Like, there was something that just was so off about that. On top of the fact that this film is not funny. I was bored through most of it. It's absurdist, but not in a good way, just in a way that just kept taking me out of the story. The one positive thing I will say is I really genuinely think that Seth Rogen, especially as Herschel, is really trying his hardest as far as acting. And I'm like, yay! But it's just, there's so many things wrong, and I think unpleasant. I think, Evan, you nailed it when you said unpleasant. I think this film is just so unpleasant. It's just, if for no other reason than rainwater being used to do the pickling. Gross.
But also, Megan, I don't think that about the deportation thing, I just remember thinking, like, this is just not being offended, but I did think, like, this is in bad taste.
Yeah.
This is not... This is not the narrative they should be going with. And then also, I agree with you about Seth Rogen. I think he's actually become a pretty good performer in non-Seth Rogen-y kind of roles. And so it was kind of disappointing to see, you've got Herschel, which is, I think he plays Herschel really well. And then
I agree.
I think that he plays Ben. I think Ben is so much poorer written that it's hard for somebody who is a good actor, but not Laurence Olivier, to make that work without seeming really cheap, which a lot of it does to me. Especially the whole, like, I'm going to fuck him over kind of thing. Just like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
I was not offended by the deportation thing, although I have to say that, and this is a whole side conversation that I will not get into, but there is arguments about whether Jews are white.
Oh, I know.
That's like a whole thing unto itself. They do enjoy some white privilege, but, like, there are many arguments that they're not white. So I'll back away from that for a moment, just because I feel like it needs to be put out there. But
no, I think you're right. That's a good point.
It is a stupid storyline. Like, it's unnecessary. It's stupid. And then they write themselves into a corner for later in the movie. So why why do that? Because there's plenty of other times in history, like we were just saying, where Jews were chased out of where they lived and forced out by people by anti-Semitism, and that could have been something really interesting here. But instead, we go down this weird route where we're turning Herschel into this Trump-like character, and it seems like that's what they're going for, and commenting on how, he breaks all the rules and he's an asshole and he says what he thinks, and like people love that, and then they just kind of abandon that as soon as he gets to the thing about Christian prayer in schools where everyone turns on him.
Yeah, it wasn't his horrifying comments about women, of course. That didn't turn anyone away. Yeah, no, of course it's prayer in schools.
Yeah, that was fun. That was treated as a joke.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I kind of, it's just so bizarre because Herschel is presented, generally speaking, as really kind of smart. And then for him to not, I think that even though it's fish out of water and he's got 100 years of catching up to do and this, that, he would figure out pretty quickly what is acceptable and what is not. Yeah. Just because he's not an idiot. If you are from like the poorest place in the world at the time and you escape death at the hands of the Cossacks, you are going to figure out that you should keep your fucking mouth shut about Christianity and prayer in schools. So that's all.
Yeah. I wish this movie was better because I like I said, I liked the beginning and I like the end. I think this could have been a really interesting opportunity that was squandered. Just the saltiest middle.
Pun intended, because of pickles.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they should unpickle this fucking negative and burn it. So, although I'm sure it was shot digitally. Oh, the other thing that was kind of a bummer is there were a lot of times when you could tell which Seth Rogen was the live Seth Rogen and which one was the acting second Seth Rogen.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time, acting second Seth Rogen was the present day one. And it was just kind of a bummer because like, I can kind of, how you can see the fuzzy outline on like special effects that aren't great. And every once in a while you could see that fuzzy outline. And it was just like, I'm out of the moment. I mean, if fucking David Cronenberg can do 2 Jeremy Ironses and you can't tell which one was shot first in 1987, then God damn it, it's 2020.
Get it together.
I know it's been a difficult year, but
get it together, people.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
The last thing I will say is I feel like grief is such an interesting topic to mine and explore, and especially when it's connected to, family and, connected to Judaism and a shared history. And it does not earn its ending at all. And even though it's like a pleasant ending, it just does not earn it. And so it just feels kind of cheap and hollow. And it's unfortunate.
It is a bummer.
Yeah.
But perhaps we should move on to talk about random acts of violence.
Oh,
perhaps we should. I'm
really interested to hear what both of you have to say about this movie. But first, I will do a very quick plot summary. This is a film that's directed and written by Jay Baruchel, who many know from his more comedic roles. It's about a comic book writer played by Jesse Williams, and he writes this serial killer comic that everybody loves. And he's on this, tour to promote it, but also to write its kind of final issue. And while they're on this tour, people start getting murdered in the same way that the serial killer from the comic has been killing people. And it turns out it is, spoiler, turns out it is the serial killer. He was never caught, and it all's kind of coming full circle, I guess.
Yeah.
Did I leave anything important out there?
You left out that it kind of doesn't work.
I was getting to that.
I mean, I think there are parts of this movie that are really effective, and like An American Pickle, there are a lot of missed opportunities. I'm not sure exactly if I know what the better opportunity is. First of all, I don't think you cast Jesse Williams in this role.
Oh, I disagree. I love Jesse Williams in this.
No.
See,
I thought he was effective.
I agree.
I thought he was really good, and you guys are going to think this is weird, though. He's so good looking that it's distracting.
Oh my God.
Because you're just like, oh my God, Jesse Williams. You're so awesome on Grey's Anatomy. I do appreciate, by the way, that his character that I've never really seen him in anything but Grey's Anatomy.
Cabin in the Woods.
Oh yes, you're right.
Mhm.
Okay, Cabin in the Woods. But I appreciate that he is very different from his character on Grey's Anatomy, and he doesn't do any of that low talking like, "Okay, I get it, you're upset" kind of stuff. There's no room for that. It's a horror movie. But the thing that kind of bummed me out was I knew from the beginning that he had witnessed this. He had not necessarily witnessed his mother's death, but he had witnessed a gruesome killing. That I knew. And then when we figure out that it's him, it wasn't a surprise because we already knew that he witnessed a gruesome killing. And it was also like, you knew who was going to die. The thing that was really strange though was like, this movie is, even for me, shockingly violent. I mean, when the serial killer kills the boy, there's a young man and two young women in an SUV that breaks down, and he stabs all three of them to death. When he stabs the guy, you see him stab the guy. It's got to be 25 times on screen.
Yeah, it is.
And
intense.
Oh my God. And then when he slices the woman in the driver's seat in the leg, I was just like, oh my God. And I also knew it was going to be the triptych though, because it was three of them and they'd already shown the picture. So I was just kind of like, all right, if this is what we're in for, I don't need to see all this because I know what's coming. And that's why it was a little bit more effective with the second killing, that you didn't really see her get killed on screen. You saw her head later, which was fucking gross. Although good prosthetics, because that really looked like her. And then the ending was just like, it was just dumb. I mean, this is one of the horror movies.
Yeah,
it's such a hard time because you usually have 2/3 of a good thing going, and then you have an explanation. And in this movie, the explanation kind of makes sense, but at the same time, it's stupid.
Endings are hard. It's hard to stick the landing sometimes.
This movie is one of those movies where the more you think about it, the less it makes sense. And I found that was my problem. I liked it enough watching it. Like, I still had issues as I was watching it, but I finished the movie and Shauna and I were just sitting around talking about it, trying to figure out how some of the aspects of it made sense. And the more we talked about it, the less sense it made. So like you mentioned something before about Jesse Williams. There's these flashbacks in the film to a child at Christmas, and there's a murder. And we know, they play it kind of like a twist, but it's not a twist. It's so obvious that was him when he was a kid.
Yeah.
But it's really is like you figure out that it was the same killer and he knew the killer. I guess it was his dad ? It's really not clear, but it seems like
I thought it was his dad, but
I did not think it was his dad, and I still don't think it's his dad.
I thought that they were trying to play it that way, and it ended up I agree with Megan. It's not his dad, but it seemed like they were going down that road at first. So
yeah, so there's these flashbacks, and then they all kind of come together, and we find, Jesse Williams has been writing this comic. He knew the serial killer, and it's could have been this really interesting way to comment on trauma and how he's been working through this trauma, but it's really doesn't seem like it because he's kind of an arrogant prick when they interview him about everything, about, why he's doing this comic and stuff. And he gets very defensive of it. So he's clearly like, he I don't know. It's weird.
Because that's what I don't think it actually is about that. And that's why I think it's weird. And I agree that it could definitely be about that. And that would also be interesting, but I don't think that's the comment that's being made. I would argue the commentary and where it really works, and granted it's very overt about this, but I think the commentary where it works is about the radio host talks about the lionization of, toxic male violence and how we celebrate that. And then I think Jordana Brewster, who, by the way, I have never seen Jordana Brewster be as amazing in anything as she is in this. I think she's fantastic. And I wish the film had focused more on her because I think she's the best part of the film.
Yeah.
But, she talks about, how we always applaud the murderer. We always applaud the killers. We never focus on victims' narratives and their voices and their stories. And I think that, especially with not just the fascination and audience around horror, but specifically around true crime, I think that's a really interesting and salient, commentary and, topic to explore. Like, why are we so focused as a society on the killers rather than the victims, or rather than, survivors? Why is that? And so I really love that this is raising those questions. I love that it's a very meta film in that way, and that it's absolutely glorifying violence, and it is so gory in so many ways.
Yeah.
While it is condemning it and critiquing it, I find that fascinating, that tension. But then it stops. It just kind of stops. It doesn't keep going. And I'm like, if you're going to go there, let's go there. Let's get into this really deeply.
Yeah.
And it just,
let's really comment on it.
Yes, let's do it. And it just doesn't.
Yeah.
I think that what might have been more effective as far as like the killings is like, and this would have been a very difficult directorial choice and probably a difficult thing to get past like your financiers, is show these killings in there. And if you want to talk about how horrifying violence is, fucking show it. Let's not, let's go Saving Private Ryan levels with this, let's make and they almost do. When that kid is getting stabbed to death in the front seat of that car, I was like viscerally I could not believe what I was watching.
Cringing. It was.
And then, but the thing that was kind of strange, though, like a scene earlier when the serial killer is psyching himself up, which I don't think he would have to psych himself up. He's a fucking serial killer. You can see
he's been on hiatus.
That's true.
You can see the prop knife wiggling because it's not a real knife, and
true.
I was like, oh, that's kind of a bummer. But then, where was I going to go with this? I think that you've got a real missed opportunity. Jesse Williams' character, whose name I can't, Todd, I think that's his name. Like, he's being interviewed by this radio host who is a dick, even though he is correct. But what kind of position is he in? He can't say, well, I witnessed all these murders, and that woman in the book that my girlfriend is carrying around and writing all a story about the victims is my mother. How is that going to, like, narratively, I don't understand why you would do it, and I don't understand why you would play it the way they played it there, too. It just didn't work. It's like,
right.
Why don't you just say, maybe there's no movie then, but it's like, this is a thing that I would, because people have to know he saw his mother murdered in front of him. Even if they don't know who the killer is, they know if they do a Google search of the author of this comic that his mother was murdered in front of him. Everybody knows
unless
that.
he changed his name. Yeah.
And that's what's complicated. It's like, when you think about it, so you're like, okay, he witnesses the murder of his mother. Then what? Like, what there's so much to fill in the blanks here of what his life would have to have been to get him to adulthood. To,
he's
like,
remarkably well adjusted for this.
Yeah, how could he have had all that stuff happen to him? Where did he go? What did he change his name? How did he cover up his past? How did he get to the point where he's this famous author and no one knows anything about him? Like, there's just things that the more you think about it, you're just thinking, this does not make any sense whatsoever.
I'm going to throw the film a bone in a way, in that there are many, many people who have a horrifying traumatic past and are seemingly pretty well adjusted. And I stress seemingly. So, but would it have been great to have things more spelled out or more explained or even alluded to? Absolutely. Not necessarily spelled out, but have more of his past, fleshed out or alluded to would have been great. But as far as him being well adjusted, that didn't really bother me. What does bother me, though, is that if you're making a slasher horror film, so clearly, unless you are shitting on the entire genre, you clearly like the genre that you're arguably making a film about or in. Yeah. So wouldn't that have been a great time for him to talk about how, because they mentioned this at other parts where he and the assistant artist, how if they get something horrible in their head, they need to draw it out to kind of cathartically get it out. Wouldn't that have been the time to talk about that, about how, art is cathartic, horror is cathartic, horror allows us, visceral feelings, to, kind of explore certain things without actually, facing those things. We could have had such a really complex, fascinating conversation from both sides, either side, about, why is violence being, glorified, and then, well, it's not being glorified, this is actually what's happening, and violence, is okay in entertainment, but it also allows us to, tackle really difficult topics. So there's so many layers to this that could have been explored, but it's just kind of not. And that's, I think, so there were so many things I loved about this. Like, I loved the issues it's raising. I love that it's really thought provoking in the topics it's trying to tackle, but it just didn't carry the thread. Like, it didn't keep the conversation going. It didn't take it all the way. And I really wish it had. And I think the ending is ridiculous. Like, I just was so disappointed by the ending.
Yeah, I have to talk about it. It's the same way. And one of you will be very upset with me. I don't know which, but one of you will.
Uh-oh, Evan, let's get ready.
It's the same way the ending of Point Break just makes me so mad. You've got a nearly perfect action movie, which is also the love story between these two dudes.
Oh, it totally is.
But if you really wanted to give that movie the fucking ending of all endings, and this would have pissed off the audience too, is you don't let Patrick Swayze die in the waves, because that's what he wants.
Yeah.
And the way to get him is to deny him that.
Yeah.
And to arrest
him.
I
agree with that, actually. I think that would have been a better ending.
Exactly. It's like the serial killer's like, yeah, kill me and do you have to kill me and this will be the ending. And it's like, Jesse Williams says, fuck your ending, but then he kills him. And then he says,
it burns everything to the ground.
Dead. The thing to do here would have been like, this is the guy who murdered my father. I caught him, and now he has to spend the rest of his life in prison worrying about getting shanked.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I just don't understand the whole like, fuck your ending, but you still get to die. You don't care that the house is burned down. You're dead.
It feels very much like it's trying, and as do many other parts of the film too, it feels very much like it's trying to pay homage to Seven and the ending of Seven, you know, and like also earlier, speaking of homages, it's very clear to me that the terrible triptych is, you know, it feels very much like, you know, Suspiria, the new Suspiria. And it just, and I'm just like, okay, I get what you're going for. I get what you're alluding to, but it doesn't work, because you're right. He gives him exactly what he wants. He wants to die. That's what he thinks is going to make him live forever. So, you know, and he's going to be mythic. And you give him that. Why? Like, it just doesn't make sense. And like, if he was coming at, and if he was coming at him, like if he was like, no, fuck it, I want to survive. I don't want to give him what he wants, but I need to live. Sure, then that would make more sense. But yeah, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work. And then hearing Jordana Brewster narrating the comic again, and then, you know, about how all like the best art comes from truth, or art comes from truth, and everything else, you know, in the beginning is
random act of violence.
But originally he says it's masturbatory or masturbation, and right now it's a random act of violence. And I'm like, and now we see Jesse Williams as a kid and burning along with the guy, and I'm like, okay, like it just So I'm like, because to me it seemed like Jesse Williams killed himself too in the burning. Unless he didn't.
Yeah, it did. Well, that was the thing, is like when you see the final time you see the burning, like none of the bodies are there. So they've either already burned, or, you know, the set dresser didn't put them in there. I don't know.
Jade Baruchel's body is definitely there. And
her body is there too. Okay. Jordana Brewster's. It's questionable about whether Jesse Williams is still there hugging Jordana Brewster while it's burning, but
right. I also have to say, to like walk in there, I appreciate that if you're gonna die in a horror movie, she got a decent death by saying I'm not afraid of you, or whatever, something to that effect. And but then, you know, she's sitting at a table with her like guts in her lap, and I was just like, oh, come on. I mean, I know this is like, but let's give her a little more dignity than that, please. Yeah. That really irked me.
So we know what ending would have worked better? Because that's what I keep thinking of. I'm like, if an ending doesn't work in a film, I like to try to think about what would I like to have seen.
Well, this would require Jesse Williams having like a whole bunch of like, you know, picking up the handcuffs at the tire yard or wherever the fuck they were. And chasing him and handcuffing him and be like, nope, I'm calling the cops and I'm going to explain everything. And which, you know, would be way too like, it would almost be like the ending of Psycho, where, you know, the psychologist is explaining why Anthony Perkins is the way he is.
Am I also the only one who wishes that it actually had been his character come to life rather than just the serial killer never having been caught?
Oh, that would have been way better.
Right? I think that would have been so cool.
Yeah. That would have been better.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
it was so evil it had to
Right.
manifest itself
I
into
would have,
existence.
yeah, I don't know.
For
I would have
sure.
kind of dug
Yeah.
that.
Or like it was a weird thing where it's like he would be writing
Yes!
something and then he would see that he
Right.
somehow had control of it from a writing perspective, but then it
Right.
gets out of
Like
control.
kind of
That
like
would've
in the
been so
mouth of
much better.
madness, like kind
Yeah.
of not, yeah.
The horror version of Ruby
Yes,
Sparks.
yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I was really that actually. You know, I don't want to think about the film like while I'm watching. I don't want to think about my expectations in the film I would like to see. But I couldn't stop thinking like, oh, this is going to be great. This is where it's going, and it wasn't going there. But yeah. So I clearly liked it way more than you guys. But yeah, there's definitely some issues, some massive issues.
Yeah. Also, I just want to go on the record and say, every time Jay Baruchel starts to talk, I cannot believe how much he talks through his nose. Oh my God. Okay, that's it.
Okay.
He's just a nose talker. That's
Let's-
all. Well, it's like he's from Indiana times 20. That's all I'm saying.
Isn't he
As a
Canadian?
person from Indiana, I know what it's like to. Yes, he is.
Yeah,
Yes,
he's
he is.
He's
Canadian.
from Toronto.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, as a person from the Midwest, I know what it's like to talk
I
through your
see.
nose, and he sounds like
Got
he's
it.
from there. That's all I'm saying.
So then let's move on to Sputnik.
Oh, yikes!
Really?
I mean, it was fine.
I liked it.
It was okay, but there was a movie. I think it's called The Relic, and I think it's a Peter Hyams movie where there's a creature that's like
Mhm.
it's eating some gland. I
Yes,
think Tom
yep.
Sizemore is in it, and it's the pituitary gland. I feel it's like it eats pituitary glands. And this, all I could think of was while I was watching this was like, oh, it's that monster. So that was that.
Okay.
I'll do the summary because I think I've gotten better at these. two
I'll be the judge of that.
That's right.
two cosmonauts in the mid 80s are on a mission and they're about to come home, and an alien comes into their ship, kills one of them, inhabits the other one, but it isn't a parasite. It's forming some kind of symbiotic relationship. And down on good old Mother Russia, there's a general who's trying to weaponize this creature that's inside this guy, who can separate itself from the guy by being vomited out every night for about an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And they feed it human brains with like the fear. It's not
Cortisol.
adrenaline, but it's like some kind of cortisol.
Yeah.
Thank you. And you've got a scientist who is trying to figure out whether she can separate this guy or not from the creature. She wants to get rid of the creature and save the guy, and then it becomes kind of a road trip. And then it's not. And then she adopts his daughter.
The one nitpick that I will say is it's early 80s, not mid 80s. And the other thing is it's not Mother Russia, it's the Soviet Union because they're in Kazakhstan.
Well, I know, but I wanted
You
to say
just wanted to say Mother Russia because they're in Kazakhstan, which is not Mother Russia.
I know. Well, but they're all Russian. They're just in Soviet
That's true.
Kazakhstan.
Yeah.
No, that's true.
It's not.
I'm just nitpicking.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really well acted. It's moody as fuck. It looks
Yes.
good.
Very moody.
The creature effects
the creature
are great.
is surprisingly,
Yeah.
I mean, for a computer generated character, it really feels like it's right there
Yeah.
with you.
Mhm.
But it's moody in a good way, but I feel like it just takes too long to get where it's going, and then once it starts going there, it just quite can't decide how it's going to end, and so the main character ends it for us by killing himself, and therefore also the creature. It was fine.
See, I really dug this movie. I think for me, I really responded to the main character was Tatiana, not
Well, sure. I said
yeah.
main character because Tatiana is the main character. You are correct.
Yeah, and I love her character in this. She's ballsy as fuck. I love that she's just like
She's unafraid.
Yeah, she's just such
or unethical, depending on how you look at it.
Well, that too.
Well, yeah,
That too.
I mean, we first meet her, she's in trouble for going ahead with a very controversial and dangerous procedure to help a patient.
Yeah.
And that's why this general finds her and wants to use her for this, because he knows it is a dangerous process of trying to separate this guy. And so I don't know, I love her character. I think she's always pushing the envelope, and she doesn't take no for an answer, and she's always digging deeper and pushing people, even when early on she's clearly not getting all of the information, and she finds ways to get the information that she needs to try and help this guy. And I just, something about that I responded to, that I enjoyed watching her character go on this journey.
Megan?
So I think I'm somewhere in between the two of you, but probably a little more on Dave's. And yeah, I liked this. I thought this was fine. I also I'm not really a fan of unethical scientists, but I did find Tatiana as a character really interesting. And it's almost like her beginning, her methods are unorthodox and, unethical, but then when she's on the base and when she's, working with the creature and trying to separate the creature from the cosmonaut, it doesn't really feel so much like she's unethical. It just feels like she's tenacious. And so that I liked and that I appreciated. And I agree with you, Evan, that she's really, the actress who plays her is fantastic. And she's
great.
So great.
Yeah.
I think she's the best thing about this film. And she's so interesting to watch. And she's a really interesting character. I think this raises some really intriguing issues about parasites and symbiotes and, and extraterrestrial life and science and, how far you go with experimentation and, and ethics in science. And it also like weaponizing science, which is really interesting. But yeah, I don't know. There was something about this that I felt kind of like I wanted more.
Yeah.
And it kind of left me a little like, oh, okay. So I found Tatiana really interesting. And I think this is raising some really interesting questions. But for me, it didn't really kind of go anywhere. It was just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know how to describe it. It's like when you've got this is a genre movie, basically, that's trying to be something beyond that. Mm-hmm. And it's really hard to do that. You're
not going to talk about elevated genre, are you?
No. But I mean, it wants to be. It doesn't want to be just a horror movie. It's about for ethics, and like morality, and what. Mm-hmm. And in a sense, the cosmonaut who's got the I guess we'd call it a symbiote, because as they learn, they are intimately connected in a way that is not parasitic.
Mm-hmm. Right. And they even say that at one point that the idea is that the organism continues gaining strength until it doesn't even need them anymore. It can just be its own thing, but it's also like fused with him. So it would, like, his body, I think, would die, but it would still have like his consciousness in the creature or something.
Right. Like exactly. Yeah.
That's kind of confusing. And I think, for me, that was a struggle, was that there were some elements of the film that were just kind of confusing, especially toward the end, where I was just not really understanding what was going on. It just wasn't super clear.
Yeah. Well, one thing that is clear is that a bullet will kill it, because it sure as shit does. And just one well-placed bullet, I might add. Yeah, and the whole subplot with like his kid that he's abandoned just seemed a little underbaked.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because it's like, all right, well, we've got 5 or 6 scenes with this kid, and he says, I feel like, this is my punishment for abandoning my child, but they kind of just leave it there. And then her big solution is she's going to go adopt the kid?
Because she was adopted.
Yeah, like, it's just like, oh, what a coinkadink.
Twist!
It just, that part of it, I was just like, I think that we need to just, maybe simplify this a little bit, I think it's good enough that she wants to not kill her patient and, get this organism out of him. I think that's good enough.
Yeah, I agree. We didn't need a whole subplot with a child. And, and there are plenty of films, sci-fi films specifically, dealing with, motherhood and dealing with, separation of children or loss of children. And so there's nothing wrong with that, of course. But that's not really needed here. It feels superfluous. It doesn't feel like it's really adding anything to the character development for either character. It doesn't feel like it's adding anything to the narrative. It doesn't feel like it's adding anything to the thematics of the film.
Mhm.
Like, I really wish it had stayed much more streamlined on ethics of science and, and experimentation and, military intervention with science, and how, historically military and science advancements have such a thorny and complicated and unethical history, and that would have been really interesting to delve into more, rather than let's, tack on a child story. Like, that just feels so forced, and no, why are you going there? Let's go back over here.
Yeah.
And also, I think it would have been stronger if you remove the child story and you've just got the cosmonaut, like, and his motivations being ambiguous. Like, he's not even sure how he feels. Because he's like, I kind of like the way it makes me feel, but at the same time, it's kind of fucked up. I mean, he says that at one point. I don't remember. And it's like,
right, because it makes him stronger. They say, each time the
and
creature
regenerates
feeds,
more.
Yeah, he gets stronger, and you could see him taking some delight in that, especially after we find out that, at first we are led to believe that he's not cognizant of any of this that's happening. And then later we find out, he's fully aware of what's going on, and he's kind of digging
which
it.
I thought that was great.
Yeah.
I thought
me too.
This is really a way. Let's go down this path.
Yes.
Absolutely. And then it's just kind of like, I'm ambivalent,
Right.
It's like, okay, well, yes, I understand that, but let's go in one direction finally,
Yeah. For me, what I think, looking back on what was so confusing, is all the business about the cortisol and like how the creature feeds and gains strength, especially when they talk about the other cosmonaut and why it chose to feed on him versus not to bond with him, and the idea that he had some disease that gave higher cortisol. It to me, it just was very confusing. I didn't understand
No, it wasn't that it gave him higher cortisol. It was that he had cancer, so he wasn't going to be able to, or maybe it did give him higher cortisol, though I don't think cancer does that.
Right.
But
he had Addison's.
Addison's, yes.
Right.
Which is basically, what does that do? That it's an adrenal insufficiency, right?
Oh, right. Yes.
Yeah. So I guess, do you need adrenaline to produce cortisol? I don't know. I don't know enough about the body.
Right. Yeah. So that's where it got kind of confusing. It's like, well, did it feed on him because he had cancer? But then why would it feed on someone that was unwell? That doesn't make sense to me. So that's a
good point.
That part to me was just very confusing, and I didn't understand. So maybe if we cut out the child subplot, we could have found out more about the creature, and maybe that would have made more sense.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I will say it was really fascinating to see the creature bite people's heads off and chew on their brain.
Oh, it was brutal. It was brutal. When it was just fucking ripping heads off, I was horrified.
Yeah, me too. Especially like the first one that you kind of see through the night vision, so you can't quite tell.
That was great.
That somehow made it even worse.
It did. It did. It was great.
And also the idea that it's just basically like chewing on this one part of your brain and fuck the rest of you,
Yeah.
It's like, oh God. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. So, but there were parts of it where I thought like the creature almost looked kind of cute. It was really strange. So, but then it had those fucking teeth. God.
Yeah, and those like insect eyes.
Yeah. But like
but
when
parts
it curled
of it
up,
were like, when it curled up around the toy.
Curled up around the toy, and it's like, and that was I didn't really realize what was going. I couldn't see what was going on in this one, Evan. There you go, mark it down. I didn't realize that the creature had, taken on some of his memories and was missing his child.
Yeah.
And when they explained that, I was like, yeah, okay, now I get it. But the child subplot's still.
Right, but the thing of it is, you still could do that part of the story without the child. Like, it could have been like his childhood. Could have been his childhood toy or something like that, or like something a parent gave him. So again, you could still do that same scene, but just you don't need the child.
But just better.
And why did we need the child story where it's, twist, it's Tatiana, and she's like, I'm not a boy, my name is Tatiana, and I'm like, is it because like the whole time they're trying to make us think that that's his son? in the orphanage. But guess what? His son is in an orphanage. So it just,
Weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, but some great ideas here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I dig it. I respect what it was going for, even if it didn't quite land.
Yeah. I would tell people to watch just because, like, you haven't quite seen anything like this. I mean, you've seen some horror movies like this, sorta, but this is definitely different.
And sci-fi too, because I mean, there are a lot of sci-fi that explore these kinds of issues too. So
right, but it's also like really thoughtful too, which I appreciated, even though some of the thoughts don't add up to much. But okay, maybe it's also because we don't speak Russian, and maybe the subtitles were bad. Who knows?
I mean, that's fair. That is very, very fair. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there are a couple of times when like they're speaking very long sentences, and all you see is like, "I don't feel well," or whatever. It's like, I think he might have said more than that. I don't know. So,
fair enough.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so then let's do a quick recap. Sounds like you guys would say "See Before the Fire."
I would say that.
Cool.
Yes.
That sounds like enthusiastic, right?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I would say don't see American Pickle. It's not good.
Oh my God, no, pass.
Well, how do we feel about Random Acts of Violence? It feels like we're a little more mixed on that.
I would say see it because I think it has enough good ideas there that are really thought-provoking.
Yeah. I think that you can separate the wheat from the chaff in this one and appreciate the wheat and just be like, that was chaff.
Yeah.
So go see it.
Okay. Yeah, I can get on board with that. And then I would say see Sputnik, and it sounds like I guess we would all say see, even if it's not necessarily the most enthusiastic see.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. Yeah, because the lead performance is great and the ideas that it raises are really interesting. So yes.
Cool. Well, that brings us to the end of another thrilling episode of Spoiler Piece Theater. So
thrilling indeed.
Thrilling
and chilling. First, I'll start out by saying thank you to our editor, Otto Clamor. Thank you so much, Otto. We really appreciate it.
Yay,
Thank you.
Thanks, Otto.
Then I will say that you can find us anywhere you can get podcasts, but you can go to our website, spoilerpiece.com. That's another way you can get to us. And we are all over social media, but you can find us. We're Spoiler Piece Theater on Facebook, and we are at Spoiler Piece, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. So check us out there. If you want to get in touch with us for any reason, whether you agree, disagree, want to say hi, want to ask us a question, you can send us an email, spoilerpiece@gmail.com, or you can give us a call
at 862-21-PEACE.
And you can leave us a message and we will listen to it, and we will get back to you in some form.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. I'm getting a little punchy here. If you like the show, please, 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 please rate and review us on your podcast platform of choice. It'd be cool if you did it on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, what have you. But to rate us, you can just go to ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece, and that will give you a nice handy link to take you to your app of choice. And if you really enjoy what you're listening to, please head over and check out our Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/spoilerpiece and you can sign up. You can get exclusive audio each week for as low as $5 a month. And you can vote in polls. There's even a tier where you can pick out stuff for us to watch. And we can't promise we're not going to be harsh about it, but we will watch it.
We will watch it and talk about it.
We will watch it and talk about it. This week's exclusive audio, we talk about The Lost Boys, which is a film that we all very much enjoy. So we had a lot of fun talking about the movie.
Yeah.
And we'd also like to take this opportunity to say thank you to our patrons.
So we want to thank Bob Chipman, Chris Wilkinson, Davida Margolin, Deirdre Crimmins, Elisa, Christopher Jensen, Max Colville, Mike Lord of the Sith, Rory Glynn, Sean Pensionar, Shauna Harris, Shelley M. McCaskill, Shona Glasgow, and Zach Pigeon. Thank you, patrons, so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, patrons.
We really appreciate it. And so my name is Evan Crean. I am co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living. You can follow me on Twitter and on Letterboxd as Real Recon.
My name is Megan Kearns. I'm a contributor to Edge Media. I, too, am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. And you can follow me on Twitter at OpinionSWorld and on Instagram and Letterboxd at TheOpinionS.
And my name is Dave Riedel. I write occasionally for Salt Lake City Weekly. I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. And you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd as Dave Sees Movies.
We will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.